Burfict.
That's probably the best song on the album.
I don't think any other song is going to top that.
That was one of our reactions to JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown's new collaboration album, Scaring the Hose. If you guys want to check out the full live album reaction, which we did on a live stream with our community, you guys can check it out. The link is in the description. But Lou, let's get into this. This is a massive album, probably one of the best albums we've gotten all year so far. So let's dive into this artist performance. How did you like Danny Brown and JPEGMAFIA on this record?
An album, bro. I mean, it's interesting because going into this, my expectations were to get some manic energy from the both of them, some voice manipulation, and like just some creative but quirky flow patterns. And they delivered upon that for the most part. What's interesting to me the most is the fact that when you look at the mixing of the vocals, it seems like there's a clear distinction between the way Danny's vocals are mixed and JPEG's are mixed. When you look at a song like Step a Pig, you can really hear that, how like Danny's vocals are mixed a bit lower. He's kind of not as audible, which is really interesting. And that's the one thing I want to say is that, like, if you really want to make sure you're hearing them, you need fucking Genius open, bro, because the vocals are not always audible. But I feel like that was kind of an intentional choice on their part, just because they could have had a clean mix, but then it would have sounded like any other record.
That's very true. And you know what? I saw something very interesting on Twitter, and it was like, not even AI could replicate what JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown did on this album. And that's what I really like, is that they fully came together for a quirky but yet coherent performance. And I also like the way that they attacked the track list, because if you go through most tracks, a lot of them don't have any hooks. You only, I think, have like 5 to 6 hooks.
Scaring the Hose had a hook.
Scaring the Hose had it. Burfict had it as well. I believe Orange Juice Jones had one as well. And then Kingdom Hearts Key, which JPEGMAFIA ended up doing as well. So what was cool is that, like, they also had equal runtime on the album. This was an incredible stat from Hip Hop by the Numbers. He's always on point with his stats. Danny Brown had 45.6% of the runtime on the album, and JPEGMAFIA had 46.4%, which is interesting because usually, like, you go through more of like a mainstream album like Her Loss, and like Drake is taking over most of the album. But with this, they were at an equal playing front throughout the entire track list, and they brought the passion throughout it. So there was literally not a single performance where I was like, oh, this shouldn't have made the album, or oh, this sounded off key.
I mean, if there was one kind of thing I wasn't huge on, it would have been JPEGMAFIA's bridge on the song Jack Harlow Combo, where
you didn't like the singing?
I didn't like the singing too much. I mean, it kind of made up for it with like the hyperactive flows and the socially poignant message on that track, especially on his verse. But apart from that, I do love the way that JPEGMAFIA was able to swiftly change emotions and go from, at times, like this calm cadence to this aggressive tone, like just suddenly shifting the way that he did that. That was really awesome. For Danny Brown, he had a bunch of standout performances. I saw some people saying that he's washed, that he sounds like an old man. Fuck all that. Listen to Burfict, and he's just brimming with confidence. You also go to something like Orange Juice Jones. He has that double time flow. Absolutely fucking kills
Even the way that he enters on God Loves You, like, that's a fantastic verse, and I'm going to talk about more of that in the content matter just because of all the quirky wordplay that he brought into that verse. But yeah, the whole thing of Danny Brown is sounding washed and that he's kind of playing on JPEG's field, that makes no sense.
But
because
it does feel like JPEG is the puppet master of this album.
Yes, but because he also took over 100% of the production, so you're automatically going to have that.
Even the way that, like, he'll sometimes like stop a verse just to let an instrumental build, and the way that, like, he'll make the instruments come in and out as he pleases. Like, it just felt like he was kind of overseeing everything, but Danny Brown fit perfectly on all of these beats, and it makes me think, like, there's so many other artists that I'd love to see on JPEG production.
That is very true, and what's cool, too, is that, like, their chemistry is unparalleled because you get that sort of squeaky, quirky cadence from Danny Brown that sounds super good over all kinds of different productions, which we'll go over in the production
most distinct voice, maybe, in hip-hop.
Absolutely, and then JPEGMAFIA comes through with his signature cadence, and as you were saying, I think he's the master of switching up those emotions mid-verse where you're like, oh shit, that was cool here, that was cool there. So I think, listen, artist performance was amazing.
It was amazing, and like you were saying, the chemistry was top-notch, especially considering that one of JPEG's main influences is Danny Brown. So it was kind of a match made in heaven. But let's get into the content matter next, and this is very interesting just because they're funny as fuck, bro.
This is funny.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
The album literally starts off with JPEG saying, fuck Elon Musk and the Twitter blue paying $8. Like, that shit's too expensive. You have lines from Danny Brown who's saying, like, I'm speaking in tongues because I have pussy on my face.
Well, that's the thing.
You
is
got
that
JPEG even saying, tell Hunter Biden to stay out of my sick. Like, really crude jokes, bro, that all land.
Listen to this, too. Like, even on Kingdom Hearts Key, this was JPEGMAFIA. And, what's cool about JPEG is that, like, he uses cultural references but puts like the comedic value on top of it. Feel like Ezra Miller when I'm on the scene. Like that's pretty fuck. Got my cup like I'm Argentinian, you know? Like
I know,
like
bro.
there's like all kinds of these two, like there's like this sort of emotion that both of them are playing on. For Danny Brown, I feel like most of the content matter for him was kind of like playing into like his sort of like manic personality, but also still proving that he could rap at a top tier level still like in the latter half of his career. And then you have JPEGMAFIA, who's actually extremely politically driven throughout the record as well, where he's talking about a bunch of different political issues and also bringing in the comedic factor into that. So I feel like the content matter was well balanced all throughout. And I don't think it's like a masterpiece on like the writing
No.
level as well, but that's not necessarily like the vision of the record. Just because like on a lot of different verses, like you were mentioning at the beginning of the review, some stuff is mixed in a certain way where like the lyrics seem a bit inaudible. So you're also going to need to have genius next to you to fully understand the concept
and like
of
you
it.
were saying, there are some looser songs like Fentanyl Tester where they're kind of just flexing and not saying too much, but there is a running motif within the album which I found super interesting, and that kind of unveils itself on the song Scaring the Hoes, where they're getting super meta about their work and their music, and they're actually playing into like that criticism that they make weirdo music, they make music
And they're
that
embracing it.
yeah, they're embracing it, they're owning it, and they're not scared that to make music that's going to be like estrogen repellent or some shit. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
absolutely.
they're totally taking that in, and they even have awesome lines about like, you know, how the fuck is this music going to sell? Like, we should bring in some auto-tune or some shit.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
they're just kind of playing in this satirical bag that's hilarious, and it's cool to see them owning their kind of experimental and I would say quirky lane, and kind of just making people know that they're representing that side of hip hop and doing it so well. But back to just the humor, I love the fact that they were not afraid to take shots at any celebrity. Like, just how much cultural references they bring in. It's a treat, bro.
Well, not only
It's a
that, but
treat.
it's also refreshing to hear in this day and age, because
It
there's
is.
a sort of competitive edge to the album where like
Yeah.
they're saying no one's doing it like us, and no one will be able to do it like us. But I think one of my favorite verses on this album is on "God Loves You" by Danny Brown. This is pure fucking comedy. Excuse me. If you go through this entire verse, it's literally Danny Brown taking like these biblical references but flipping them into like sex scenes and then using those references and entendres. And while yes, like certain artists can't pull that off, you know, but if there's someone that can, it is Danny Brown. And that's what I like about Danny Brown on the record too, as far as the rapping goes, is that he's fully indulgent into like the manic character that he portrays, and "God Loves You" was one of those moments for me as well.
Yeah, that was an amazing moment for sure. Something else that I really liked in terms of more like the technical side of the rapping came on, I believe this was Step a Pig, where Peggy raps, guys rap about guns, don't own them. Y'all sipping liquor, can't even hold it. I'm taking shots every day like DeRozan. Like, it's kind of a simplistic rhyme scheme, but you do have that multi-syllabic pattern, which is cool to see because they're not always getting like super technical with the rhyme schemes per se, but that was one of the examples where you did get that. And back to that theme of them kind of owning their place in the hip-hop game, it's interesting because they both have so much in common, because they were always inside the hip-hop industry, but also on the outskirts. So it's to see them come together and talk shit about the industry politics and go through the pros and cons of being a rapper just made for a perfect union. And for that reason, besides them kind of goofing off and not having much to say on a couple of tracks, I think the content was great.
Yeah, I think the content was great. It perfectly serves the record.
Yeah.
But let's go into the features, because the only feature we do have is Red Veil. And before we actually got the Red Veil announcement, it was like, where the fuck is this guy going to fit on a JPEGMAFIA and Danny Brown record? And if you guys want to go check it out, he is on Kingdom Hearts Key. And I feel like the production perfectly suits him, bro. Like, you have like this beautiful sample flipping back. And you see Red Veil going into a bag that he was never really like introduced to before, if that makes sense to you. I've never really heard Red Veil like that. And
Yeah.
what that confirms to me is that this guy is able to like play on so many different fronts, and he's able to mix in with so many different artists. So shout out to Red Veil. He had a fantastic performance on the album.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I'm happy there was only one feature, just because Danny Brown and JPEG did such a great job of keeping you entertained from track to track that you didn't want many other voices
would've
kind
taken
of
away from the
convoluting
track
everything,
list,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? But Red Veil fit in perfectly, like you were saying. I love the pain and urgency coming out of his vocal inflections. Apart from that, it was also cool to see JPEG hop in and kind of add this call and response dynamic within the track. And it's interesting because if you like close your eyes and really listen, Red Veil, the way he's mixed, he sounds like Denzel Curry.
That's
You
true.
really,
That's
you
cool.
really,
All right, I
you
never
really
picked
pick
up on
him
that. Yeah,
sounding
that's
like
cool.
Denzel Curry on that track. But yeah, only one feature. It was a great feature. It didn't blow me away. But so I think we go with great for the rating.
I think we go with great with it
Yeah.
too. But I mean, like, the features are not necessarily like the focus of this album.
It's
It's
not.
really Danny Brown and JPEG that are carrying out this track list. But let's go on to one of the biggest components of this album, and this is the production. Man, what a treat, bro. I mean, what's cool too is that like JPEGMAFIA gets super fucking weird with his production on like almost every single soundscape that you attack, and you will find that quirkiness and that signature JPEG sort of glitch sound throughout the album, but I feel like this is more of an accessible soundscape for any hip-hop fan trying to get into here. So
Yeah.
what are your highlights for the production?
I think overall, the fact that JPEG orchestrated the whole thing, the fact that, like you mentioned, he had 100% of the production is so impressive. No outside help from anyone. And he also used one machine to produce the entire album, and that's the SP404, which serves as a sampler as well as being a drum machine. And apparently it also helped popularize lo-fi beats because it's an older machine now. It's been discontinued. But I just loved the array of sounds that JPEG brought in, from industrial hip-hop to more of that glitch hop to even some gospel and soul influences, some boom bap, some R&B. It just felt like a super expansive canvas where JPEG kind of prioritize production over vocals, it felt like, and that was kind of to my benefit because the soundscape really kept me locked in. And what was your favorite beat, bro, before I get to mine?
Oh, for sure, Burfict. I mean, like, also the lead, because the thing with Burfict is that it feels like this triumphant sound. Like, let's say someone would be playing like a presidential campaign and gets you super fucking hyped.
Because those horns?
Like, those horns just kick in. And what's cool is that, like, the drums only kick in when Danny Brown's chorus comes through. And then you're like, oh, fuck, this is crazy. And I was playing it in the whip yesterday. I gave it the car test. And you know what? I have to say this. All of the beats are actually mastered, like, really well, because you have so many different sounds attacking you from different areas at different points within the track list, just because, like, I feel like JPEG likes to have that unpredictability factor to all of his productions. But with this record, it was a bit different because you're still getting that, but I feel like it's a lot more focused. So example, even something like Orange Juice Jones, where you get this soul flip, it's a lot more calm and relaxed. So you're not getting fast-paced tracks like, example, Lean Beef Patty, or even something like a Garbage Pail Kids, where they have a fantastic sample flip over, I believe, I'm not sure what it was exactly. I didn't go through who sampled yet
For
on it.
Garbage Pail Kids.
I think it was like a commercial.
That's my favorite beat on the album. And
Okay.
what JPEG did is he actually sampled a Japanese commercial for a meat packing company, which is called Nichiro. And he put that on loop for the whole song. It sounded amazing. But like, who the fuck is so obscure to kind of sample a Japanese commercial? I
You
thought
know
that
what?
was genius.
And this was in the live album reaction too. When we were talking to the community, a lot of people were saying this feels like low-key a Mad Lib soundscape to a certain
Yeah.
extent, just because of all the chops and everything that you have throughout the record.
Also,
So
that guitar solo midway of Garbage Pail Kids is exhilarating,
it's
bro.
so sick. And how do you
It's-
like those sort of like out-of-tune electric grunge guitars?
We got
come
that a lot
throughout?
on Scaring the Hose too, where you have the hand claps and you have like those squeaky violin strings, and then you get this out of tune guitar. Kind of sounds grungy, like you were saying in the reaction. And I liked it, bro, just because at every single second throughout these songs, you're not sure where he's going to take you, bro. And I love that uncertainty within the production. And like you were saying, the fact that you have songs like God Loves You, where you're getting this gospel choir being sampled, is fucking amazing too, because I expected the whole track list, to be chaotic, but you also get some softer sounding songs. Even like Harlow Combo Meal, you have like this live jazz lounge feel to, where you have this amazing piano riff ringing off, and it was cool to see them on those softer productions too, because it was a nice contrast from the rest. And also another thing I picked up on, if you go to songs like Lean Beef Patty and you have like that sped up, high pitched female vocal sample, you get a few of those on the album, and I felt like, was that them kind of being like, let's actually put the hose on the tracks with them and scare them off in real time.
Oh, that's
That's
funny.
a thought that I had.
That's
I'm
cool.
like,
that
did
might
they
be a
think
little
that
Easter
through?
egg.
Maybe.
Maybe we'll see what happens.
but
What's cool though is that like those like sped up female vocals that you hear, like you may hear those on other records, like example like LP or Veteran from JPEG. So
Yeah.
that's something that I feel like was actually needed just to like create that signature JPEG sound. Not only that, but I want to go on to something like Where You Get Your Coke From, the outro track, where what's cool is that like you have like like you get the percussions throughout it, and then boom, all of a sudden you get these massive fucking sounds. I don't know what the instrument is. I have to go back, and then there's kind of a break within the production, and then boom, Danny Brown comes back. Boom, the instrumental plays again, and then like JPEG comes through. So those like stops and breaks within the album keeps the unpredictability factor going for me. So I think the soundscape was amazing, production amazing, all throughout.
Production was amazing. One of the most, I would say, unique sounding albums that we've had in a long time, and just super unpredictable. Love the beat switches that you're getting, probably one per song, and they covered so many different subgenres and genres throughout it that I was left amazed. But let's hop into the replay value.
Yes, sir.
And this is interesting because I think I can say this for both of us. Like, we're not the guys that are going to listen to Danny Brown and JPEG on a daily basis.
That's
you know what I mean?
true.
I don't wake up on a Sunday morning and I'm like, you know what I want to hear right now? Danny Brown screaming in my ear about making choir girls squirt. Like, that's not something that I kind of wake up to it wanting, but this is, I would say, for both of their catalogs included, the album that I feel the most excited about revisiting since Atrocity Exhibition.
That's very true. That is very true. And I will say this, like, I found a lot of replay value on something like LP, to be quite honest with you, especially after getting like Hazard Duty Pay and like I believe it's Sick, Tired, and Broke as well. So like I do have my tracks that I go back to, but with this album, what's cool is that I feel like they made it a lot more accessible, let's say, because what's cool too is that it's not completely Danny Brown or it's not completely JPEG Mafia. It's that perfect middle ground where they're both attacking these fantastic rapping performances all the way through. And listen, I'm not going to say that I'm going to revisit this every single day, but it's going to be one of my most played albums of the year so far, just because I feel like the quality, especially for the first quarter of 2023, has been on the down low, and something like this shines out of something, you know, let's say that's a bit more grim right now in the hip-hop industry. And not only that, but I cannot name you a single skip on this album.
Skipless, absolutely skipless.
Skipless album, absolutely, all the way through.
So yeah, I think that the replay value is amazing. Like, I have this itch to keep going back. I'm already like 6-7 listens deep, and I want more.
Not only that, but what's cool about this album is that you could play it from like front to back and just have it on loop the entire day.
35 minutes,
that's
bro.
Listen,
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing for the past day, is just like I've been, let's say, even doing a work or like going through it, and I'm like, oh fuck, like it's such a nice cohesive album, but yet it's so entertaining and takes so many different twists and turns that you kind of want to have to go back through it. But let's get into the overall thoughts, man. Listen, this was a treat. I think this album did live up to the expectations. This was being rumored for like a year now, and now that we finally got it, I feel like we're starting the year on an extremely positive note. What they did on this album was incredible from start to finish. The quirkiness of the record, all the sample flips, the performances and the chemistry between Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia, the Red Veil feature. There is so much to unpack within this album, and it's only 14 songs. It's a treat from front to back. I think it's an amazing record.
I think it is a mind-blowing album, and it's my favorite album of 2023 up to this point. And I just love that they're always making their own choices. They're not being influenced by the outside lane. They're not kind of following suit with the hip-hop trends of today. And I think that it's also one of the most refreshing collab albums from the past decade, in my opinion. And I just love the fact that they just got as nutty and frantic with this as possible. Production was out of this world. And it feels like when I'm listening to this, it's like I'm on a bullet train. The way that the album accelerates because of the fast tempo of the beats, because of the productions that are always in transformation, the quick flows. It feels like a ride that never takes time to stop, bro. It's just in constant motion. One of the most exciting and thrilling album experiences of the entire year. And early prediction, I think it's cracking my top 10 list for 2023.
You think it's cracking your top 10?
I think it's making it.
Well, that's
sure.
very interesting. That's very interesting. Excuse me. So listen, guys, I think we have an album of the year contender on our hands. Let us know in the comment section, what would you rate this album? Would you go bad? Would you go mid? Would you go good, great, amazing, or perfect? Let me know in the comment sections. Lou, I'm extremely happy with this album.
Yeah,
I think we got a treat,
and that
bro.
first reaction was also a blast, like one of our favorites with the community. So if you guys do want to check that out, link in description. Thank you guys so much for all the support and love, and we'll catch you in the next one.